says in your governing documents that you're responsible and take ownership of when you condemn land for this rail, you're responsible for all those warehouses, houses, whatever's on that land. You're responsible for its disposal, for its end use. However you see fit, you own it. When you now own this, isn't it not applicable that if there's a fee, whether it's a tipping fee, disposal fee, removal fee, tear down fee, that this would be under the same confines of a definition of party to how you remove what's in the way of the rail?
We're not removing what's in a rail in your example of the right-of-way acquisition. Right-of-way acquisition is part of a capital cost.
What do you do with a warehouse that's in the way of a pillar? Do you tear the warehouse down?
Yes.
Where does it go?
First, we'll make all the effort to reuse or recycle the material.
Good.
Then what's not possible in recycling or reuse will be going to the landfill.
Which landfill?
It could be whatever the available, yes.
What landfill? My question is, what landfill will it go to?
Most likely Waimanalo.
Waimanalo cannot take construction demolition debris.
Okay, then if it's a construction material, or sometimes we just include the soils. So some of those things would go to some landfill.
So Banana Patch, for instance, residential houses there. Where will those houses, when they're demolished, go?
I don't know the specific location of that particular thing, but it would have to go someplace.
It
Yes,
can't
I'll
go to
give
the
you
landfill.
right.
It's not going to be burned at the H power plant. It goes to PVT.
It could be, unless it's contaminated, it may not go there.
And if it's contaminated, where would it go?
Yes, then there would be a mitigation measure for depending on the contamination.
Question, where would the contaminated mitigation measure finally find a home for this? Where does it go? Where does it finally sit?
When you come in at the real specificity, if there's a hazardous material or some petrochemical contamination or whatever, there are mitigation measures. In case of petrochemical, we can store it somewhere and then they deal with it, and after cleaned up, it can be reused.
So, Chair, my question is that if we have a building with lead, asbestos, it goes to the only construction demolition waste landfill privately run and operated on the island of Oahu, which is in the community of Nanakuli at this time. Just to bring clarity here, the CD1 that was proposed does not mention Nanakuli, does not mention PVT, because my understanding, the blue ribbon panel that's coming out for a new landfill will accept construction demolition waste. So at such time, since that new landfill isn't upon us, it would seem about that in the CD1, wherever the rail construction debris goes, that community affected by this, it's called environmental justice. It's a buzzword of the day. So at this time, Banana Patch warehouses that get demolished, and if they can't be reused for those that want to reuse them, however that works out, that's not my inquiry, Chair. My question again will be, is that when you tear down to make way for the rail, it's not just right-of-way acquisition. There's buildings that are being and going to be demolished. There's going to be warehouses demolished. There's going to be vacancies of buildings and relocation of personnel, workers, and businesses. When those shells of dwellings have to go somewhere, again, the way Hart has it in its bylaws says you're in control of that. The end use of the expenditure is already in your jurisdiction, already of an output, because you have to pay. You have to pay a tipping fee, you have to pay to demolish it, and you have to pay to dispose of it. So you're already tasked with that. This measure merely says that of party to that, you're tacking on an expense. As I see it, Chair, Hart already has the authority to say that of party to the expense, if this council sees fit, that the same time when you remove a building and you deposit it somewhere, you could attach it to a tipping fee for all that matter, because it's a disposal removal cost.
If you add it to the tipping fee, I agree that will be the cost. But this, as I understand it, established a separate payment, non-specific. And this is not a part of the cost usually incurred as a part of the demolishing or the landfill. We are already paying, as you mentioned, the fee that's required. And I think that the key point that I would like to point out is it's going to the area or the facility where that is their business to receive demolished material. We're not introducing a new area So therefore, there's no added impact or new impact.
Part of the measure is to look at compensation, and you're saying it's out of your scope. Along the rail route, if there's a business or residence that has an issue with vibrations with the rail line, if they have issues with noise with the rail line, you're going to mitigate with some kind of a skirting, I believe, for noise factors. If there's an application for vibrations that may afflict a neighboring, abutting dwelling, isn't that an expense utilized in the same definition to compensate the fact that one of our communities is going to get all of the, however you mitigate the hazardous material, construction, demolition, waste, the purchasing of the properties to make rail of that right-of-way, it's got to go somewhere. Wouldn't this be under the same, by definition, noise mitigation, vibration mitigation, disposal mitigation?
Answering your question, isn't this the same? Answer is no. The mitigation measures for such thing as noise and vibration has been clearly documented, identified after the study. Then the mitigation measures are committed in the EIS document.
Often,
The debris deposit was not identified as the added impact.
why couldn't we do that then? Why couldn't we say it's an added impact?
I think you need to prove that as an impact.
In my analysis of some of the other rail lines, if very quickly, in my analysis of some of the other rail lines, steel wheel, heavy rail, after it was built, nearby residents complained of noise. Then after the fact, they would provide noise barriers. That's considered mitigation or applicable of using federal or local matching funds, right? So after the fact, when rail's built and they says this is too noisy, now they put up a skirting to kind of help with the sound mitigation, noise mitigation. It's applicable to the expense. If you have a document of an EIS that says we're doing this project, oops, as my understanding, you don't even know how much volume of debris of the tipping fees that you're going to be paying, whether it's Waimanalo Gulch landfill, if it's not construction demolition waste, or going to PVT, which is the construction demolition waste. I've asked this in repeated committee hearings. Can you give, and we've gone back and forth on letters, can you quantify? Have you estimated? Can you financially put on a ledger, this is what it's going to cost when we've got all this property purchase, warehouses being demolished, houses being demolished, the actual construction of the rail, the pillars, the soil, whatever it may be. Have you quantified and measured how many trucks have to go to the landfill so that you can put on a ledger it's going to cost this much? Do you have those figures?
I don't. We don't. But the contractor does, because that's his cost. He would have had to estimate the cost and include it in the cost proposal.
When rail was built in other municipalities and it was found that the noise was just too much, steel wheel on steel rail makes more noise than what was pitched to the public, and they find out it's a very noisy noise pollution. The rail endeavor came in after the fact and expended monies to mitigate that. Why couldn't you do the same when it comes to the debris? This is part of the mitigation, because at this time in the EIS, you haven't quantified to the public, to the voters in the '08 vote, to the public to this very day, exactly how much it's going to be, so that this council can make a determination. Thank you.
Well, what we're going to do, I think, is amend this to the CD1, because it takes out non-Achille and PVT, and then defer it until we get information. Okay? Because we need that information.
We are paying for keychains and coloring books. I don't care if that's only $100. That's not appropriate. And it seems to me that if that can be included in the CIP, then why can't this program? It doesn't make sense to me.